This dev talk is super long. It addresses pretty much all of the main concerns that people had about the game. We'll go over everything and also add some stuff, just some stuff that they kind of left out when they were talking about it. First off, we can go to the first section, which is about the main story. A lot of people were let down about the main story because they felt like the game was advertised with this sort of horror aspect to it, but then the story itself was not that bad. We had a good sense of tension in the prologue, but then after that, it was pretty much just like basic stuff. And they explained that the reason for this is because they wanted the main story, especially the first part of the game, to be mass appealing. Like, they don't want people to look into the game and instantly see all of the dark stuff and then stop playing it. So that's why the first portion of the main story and the main story itself is more upbeat, and later on they'll have other sections with the despair and the horror stuff that everybody's looking forward to. There's also about the ship itself, where the ship that we're on and also Arc City, that whole section, which is a actual portion of the ship that we're on, it's like the city of the ship. That whole area is really like bright and peaceful, and they said that this was also because they wanted to make the general tone of the game not super dark. So even if we have sections of the story that are going to be dark, we're not going to have just the entire game be all gloom and doom pretty much, which I think is fine. Having your general like lobby area and the sections of the game that you interact with being not completely dark and dreary, I think is a fine thing to have. And here you can see just one of the hangouts with the characters that you can do. And also, they said that this was going to basically be the one of the calm spaces that will contrast with some of the darker elements of the story. And as the story goes on, or as the game goes on, they'll make sure to maintain a balance and not have anything that stands out too much from what they want to have as the tone of the game. One of the bigger things that they announced was trauma codes. So trauma codes were in the playtest, but you couldn't access it. It's where the psychotherapy portion is, and they mentioned trauma codes in the main story itself, where trauma codes are basically just things that let you look into the character's past. So we'll be able to find out a lot more about our characters. At the start here, we can see Haru and Renoa with needing a currency. We don't know how this currency works to unlock Renoa's. I'd assume that they have way more characters here. They specifically mentioned Renoa because she's one of the characters that we know very little about. Like, we know that she has sort of this aspect to her, and she has her moniker, the Black Rose, but she acts nothing like that when we're around her, and she's very attached to us for some reason, which we don't know. And in a separate interview, which I posted about, they mentioned that you'd be able to find out a lot more about Renoa through the trauma codes. So this is going to be something that basically acts as a character story for a lot of characters, and we should be able to find out a lot more about these characters. So here you can see a bunch of stories, and the cool thing here is the branching paths here. You can see that depending on what you pick, I suppose, or maybe you just be able to do all of them, there's different endings that you can go to. So this would maybe be bad ends, and we could see certain traumas take place when we get the bad endings. You can see the achievement list here. Looks like there's 6 achievements total per character, and they talk about the multiple endings with a range of outcomes based on your choices. So this should also reveal some darker stuff, because if we're looking into characters' traumas, then depending on the character, I would assume most, if not all of them, are going to have some pretty heavy stuff in their traumas and their backstories. So this is one of the sections that's going to have the darker story aspects that they were talking about, which wasn't present so much in the main story. And then if we jump forward a bit, they also said there's stories besides trauma codes, which are going to just be basically off the, quieter moments off of the battlefield. We already have hangouts in Arc City with our characters. There's I think there's 8 per character, so I don't know if they're talking about those or if we're going to get even more stuff than that besides just the Arc City hangouts. One of the big things that's announced here is Galactic Calamity. Galactic Calamity is the seasonal content of the game. This content lasts for 3 months per season, and this is basically main story continuations. They mentioned that they want to maintain this 3-month cycle, so every 3 months we'll get a new story update, and you'll be able to do the new Galactic Calamity. this might be the first one. We can see Yuki, and I think her name was Chizuru. I forgot her name. I don't know who the other two are. But this might be the section right after the main story drops off. There's going to be a lot of stuff in the Galactic Calamity because this is pretty much the central part of the game that continues the story and gives us events and stuff. So there's going to be, at the start of the game, from what I saw during the other interview, they said that there's not going to be a Galactic Calamity. It's going to be 3 weeks, and then the Galactic Calamity starts, and then that's when the 3-month period per Galactic Calamity kicks in. I don't know if we'll have downtime between seasons or anything. That's something we'll have to find out. But this is pretty much the main story updates that will be occurring every 3 months. As for what happens in the Galactic Calamity, there's 3 main story arcs. You can see this inside of one of the story arcs, and you can see there's 2 more here. And these are the bosses from the Chaos manifestations. This was specifically the Act 2 boss of the third world, and this was the Act 1 boss of the third world, I think, and this was the Act 1 boss of either the first or second world. I don't remember which one. I want to say first world, but this would maybe give us more insights into some of the stuff in Chaos. Maybe they'll save that for the other system, which we'll talk about later, but I just thought it was interesting that they had the bosses here as the portraits of the acts. And they said these stories are going to explore a wider range of themes and topics than the main storyline. Again, since they talked about how they didn't want the main storyline to be super heavy, we might get some of the darker themes in the Galactic Calamity story continuations. And then we can go forward a bit more. This is just another one of the menus that they showed. This is all gibberish, so we can't see anything about what's going on. But here you can see just some of the stuff here. There's like a point track, there's achievements, a shop. So definitely going to be a lot of rewards in here. We can go forward to the art section. So in this art section, I already posted about the AI accusation video where they had people accusing them of doing AI on their stuff, but a lot of it was just cards that needed to be updated, which hadn't gotten updated yet. So this was one of the ones, Amir's. So the changes here, on her left card, she got a little bit more detail on her clothes. It's a bit hard to see, but you can see on like the white portion here, and then also on her left thigh, compared to this one, there's a bit more detail on the white portion, and she added a little design on her left thigh. For the right card, what was this? Oh, on the collar, like here, this thing, you can see they added a little buckle here, plus like some extra details here, which weren't present in the right one. And the next up is Nia's. On the left one, you can see they added the yellow background effect, and it also looks like they added the glove to her hand. She wasn't wearing the fingerless gloves before, and now she has them. For the right one, she was facing the wrong direction, so they just flipped it horizontally because she's playing like with the wrong hand in this picture, and now it matches the right-handed guitar, and she's also playing it with the right hand. And this was the card that they had the layer issue on, which they have fixed as well. So moving forward, we have Maribel. Maribel, on the left card, they fixed the buckle design, which they updated at some point. And you can also see a bit of details were added to the belt that she has. Also, this little pouch, I guess, had some of its details changed. I also didn't notice this before this section here. This looks pretty different as well. And they changed her eyes a little bit. She looks way more like worn out in the left one and less so in the updated version. So this might have just been a design change that she had. And then on the right one, this was another part of the design change where the belts used to be lower on her and now they're higher up. So this got moved up, and you can also see, a bit hard to see, but the same thing here, this thing that got changed is also updated on this card as well. One other change they did was when you are actually playing, we can play this a little bit slower. How do I change this? Playback speed, half. So when you do this, when you use your cards now, it actually highlights the character that's doing the attack. This was not present in the playtest. This is a new thing, which is really cool. I think it does do a good job of making like getting a bigger focus on the character doing the attack. And then after the attack finishes, you'll see it switches. One really weird thing about this, though, I'm going to turn the sound back on, and we're just going to listen to it once on normal speed.
캐릭터의 연출 역시 퀄리티를 올리는데
So the weird thing there is that sound effect, like that voice line here,
퀄리티를
that is the voice line of her Greatsword card. And this is the animation for her full salvo card. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, why the voice line is playing with a different animation, if they swapped the voice line and the animation, or... yeah, I have no idea what's going on there. Then next up, make sure it's muted again. We can see there's a couple of new animations on some of the characters. This was something I noted during the playtest where it felt like a lot of characters were missing animations. I didn't play Keiron, so I don't know if this was new or not. But I did play a bunch of Renoa, and this is a new animation for Renoa entirely. This was not present in the playtest at all. So that's nice because I knew that characters were supposed to have one like 2D animation on their actual cards, and then one on their ego skills, but a lot of characters only had it on their ego skills. So I don't know if this is just animations that are going to get added to existing cards, or if they're going to have even more cards than what we saw in the playtest past their base 8 cards. But either way, more animations is good, and it's always nice to see just more of that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit about the game optimization, just a lot of the issues that were happening with the stuff. They said their 3 top priorities is just resource optimization, faster loading, and reducing overheating. One big thing was when you look at some of the areas with really texture-heavy backgrounds, like this rainy area, you have all like the water stuff, flickering lights, the actual rain, plus like the water textures, always like that kind of stuff. So this was causing a lot of overheating, which they're going to try and fix, hopefully. Next up, tooltips. This is something that was actually already fixed before the playtest even happened. It's just that the playtest was on a really old build, which lacked the tooltips. During the playtest, there were pretty much barely any tooltips. A few keywords like retain and ultimate had them, but any sort of buffs and debuffs weren't explained at all, which was annoying because a lot of characters are just reliant on certain buffs and debuffs. Like one of Magnus' things was she gives crystallization, which I think works as like a plated armor that doesn't... yeah, it's plated armor that doesn't like scale down as you get hit, just gives you shield at the start of your turn, and it's like permanent. And then units like Tressa had a bunch of debuffs, like I think she had one that was poison, that I don't remember what it did, but like poison, mark, vulnerable, agony, that sort of stuff. This was already fixed, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, and then another thing was the localization issues, which I'm not sure how much of the localization issues were because of the old build that we were on. Maybe the newer build already had like a lot of good updates for the translation, but they say that they'll try and improve it further anyways. Next up, we have the Zero system. So the Zero system is combat, is basically the second endgame mode. We had Chaos Manifestation, and now we have the Zero system. The way Zero system works is it has certain modifiers that you can put on the... It has like modifiers to the actual like stages that you do. And they mentioned that you can change the difficulty and stuff, and there's going to be a lot of things you can do. So it should be similar to Chaos Manifestation, if I understand it correctly, but with a bunch of other modifiers to change how your gameplay works. Now, this was not mentioned in the DEVTALK, but this is really, really important to talk about. Zero system drops Zeronium, which can be used in the shop to purchase a ton of stuff. The main things here are 5 prism lenses, 1 ego crystal, and 1 alignment material. Prism lenses are used for rolling prism modules to make your character's cards shiny and animated. It's for the prism module banner, and it looks like these 5 prism lenses are going to be one of the main sources of this kind of stuff. The other things, ego crystals, we don't know what they are. It's a bit confusing because ego is the term they use for character dupes called ego manifestations. But then the description says potential, which is something else entirely. That's more like the basic character enhancement tree where you farm materials to enhance your character. like the Awakening tree in Epic 7, pretty much. So it's a bit confusing that it says both ego and potential. If it's potential material, then it might just be like a weekly boss material selector. It feels a little bit underwhelming, but weekly boss materials were something that was heavily gated during the playtest, so it could end up being useful, though it is only one a month. My personal hope is that it's a 4-star ego selector. They'll talk about this a little bit later, but there are farmable ego manifestation materials, and hopefully this is one of them. Getting 4 stars to E6 is a lot harder than you would expect. So back when I played Honkai Star Rail, Asta was the free 4-star you get at the start of the game. So basically their version of Tressa. And it took me over a year to get her to E6 max imprint dupe, whatever. And that is a lot because Star Rail also gave out a lot of free 4-stars from events. I think like 4 of the 7 Astas I needed to max her out were all free, and it still took me a full year. So being able to get these sorts of ego materials is really nice, even if it's just for a 4-star. It takes way longer than you would expect, especially just sometimes you just don't get a character. The stretch is that this is a currency that isn't a full 5-star ego selector, but can combine to it. So I think one 5-star ego selector a month is kind of a lot, and for pretty much no cost. You can see it only costs 100. And comparing that to some of the other stuff in the shop, like the 4-star, these are 4-star combatants here. That costs 300. So I feel like the price is off, but maybe like it could be a portion of a 5-star selector and you combine them, or a 5-star ego selector, I mean, and you combine them to get that. But even just the 4-star one, I really hope we get. If not here, that's somewhere else. Multi-dimensional alignment seems like it's a gear stat selector. We don't know exactly how this works because this wasn't obtainable at all in the playtests. It could let you choose your substats or the main stat, just one substat or something like that. Or it could be like a substat changer or something. We'll see how it works, but you can get one of these from the Zeronium shop. Besides that, you also get one of each 4-star partner once per account. And I mean, this is not that big of a deal. Just gives you like a couple of imprints on your partners pretty much. Some command EXP and partner EXP monthly, with any excess Zeronium being used on units. Now, we'll see if they add any more stuff to the shop on launch. There could be more things in here we don't know yet, but this definitely seems like really important content just because of the currency that it drops, which you can use in the shop here. And then 7.14, they talk a little bit more about the character breakdowns. This was another complaint that people had during the playtest, where the breakdowns just felt really uninspired. All that really happens during the breakdown is they don't do anything. You just play their cards and they pop out of it. But they're going to be adding a wider variety of things that happen during breakdowns. So first up, we're going to just jump to it. Here, you play the raid card and she attacks your team. And that is a lot of damage. 1,000 is 10% of our HE. That hurts. Another thing is, this is new UI here. The text pop-up, the dialogue, and also this little cut-in on the left here. These are both new. So it's nice that they added a couple of like design stuff to it as well. Then also they say that characters might suddenly recover, which you don't see happen here. But I guess that is just a thing that might happen. And that is nice. I guess it makes the breakdowns just have like more of an impact. It's not just a thing that happens. It'll have more like, yeah, you get the idea. The minor concern I have though is that the way stress worked in playtest was a little bit annoying because it tended to all stack on a single character. It felt RNG which character would start stacking the stress, but it always snowballed in a run, and that specific character would just constantly get breakdowns every run. Every time you get a breakdown, the amount of cards you have to play to pop out of it increases more and more. You can get it all the way up to like 15 was the highest I saw anybody go. So making breakdowns more annoying might make shielding even more important just because of the way stress management worked. There's not really any good ways in the game to remove stress. The only way, the best way to manage a stress is to just not get it at all, which means you shield all the damage. So we'll see if they add more ways to play around stress management besides just shielding. They've mentioned though that later content will have other ways to make other aspects of the game strong besides just shielding through like monster designs and stuff like that. So we'll see what they end up doing there. They also talk about rebalancing some of the cards. So this is probably regarding certain units and cards from the playtest getting buffs or nerfs for the official release. In the other interview, they mentioned that once characters actually release, they won't be getting any nerfs. They didn't talk about buffs, but maybe characters could get buffed if they're underperforming after release, but they said no nerfs just because of... This is kind of the Epic 7 thing, where they don't really buff or nerf characters, or they buff characters, they don't nerf characters in there, because whenever they nerf a character, they hand out like a full selector for the character, just because of people like writing and stuff about like, I rolled for this character, I spent my money on this, and now it's like bad, that kind of stuff. So that's why we don't really get any nerfs over there, and I'd expect the same thing here. One more thing is they talk about the epiphany values here. I don't know what that means. Epiphany values, are they talking about the frequency that we get epiphanies? Because there's some sort of like hidden modifier that determines when you get epiphanies on your cards. And it could also be talking about how good or bad the epiphany cards are. Maybe some are too strong, maybe some are too weak. There was also at least one infinite that you could get from God Epiphanies, so they're probably patching that. They could also just be talking about that. Next up is the common cards and equipment from unknown spots are going to be getting reworked. This is good, hopefully. Maybe they're making some of them have stronger effects. And just because the thing about the common and equipment cards is these affect every single run you have because they're universal. They can apply to any character. Some of them being class cards, but these are going to affect all of your runs pretty much equally. Now, let's go to the most important part, the thing that everybody is here for, the monetization model. Some of you, if you were reading the Korean comments, they would say BM a lot, which stood for business model, pretty much the same thing. This was one of the biggest complaints people had about the game, and there's a lot of major reveals here. The first big reveal is that not all characters are going to be perma-limited. After their banners finish, they will go into the standard banner. Pretty much like how Epic 7 works, with collaborations and seasonal characters being the exceptions. Seasonal characters, I assume that they mean stuff like summer units, because if they're talking about like the actual Galactic Calamity seasons, that would be literally every unit, which doesn't make any sense. So I'd assume they're talking about stuff like summer. And like I said, it's pretty much like how Epic 7 works. This is the standard banner, pretty much, where every single unit gets added into there except for collabs and certain limiteds. And this also includes partners. I don't know when he'll get to this. Okay, man. Partners will also be added to the normal rescue after pickup period ends. And this is really significant because the big thing is that you can buy partners directly from the shop once a month. And it looks like new partners will also get added into here because this character wasn't present in the playtest. So either she's going to be a new limited partner, maybe the first limited partner, or they're adding more partners to the actual standard pool, hard to say, or just like more base partners. But if we're assuming that she's a new character or a new partner, then it looks like pickup or like new partners will get added to the shop as well. One question I do have is, will it be like the powder system in Epic 7 where you can also buy the Epic 7 equivalent of partners from the shop, but that includes limited and collabs? We'll see if it's not in there permanently. Here it will be in the shop permanently, but we'll see if like for a limited period of time, if collab and limited partners will end up in the shop as well. And then next up, they also mentioned that they'll be modifying the way that the ego manifestation system, which is their limit break system, works. And this is through buyable ego manifestations. So this is the currency that you get from pretty much summoning dupes of 4 stars and 5 stars. I remember it being 8 per dupe 4 star. This racks up decently fast. Now you have to choose, of course, between buying ego manifestations or buying rolls, because these are rolls you could buy. It's pretty much 35 rolls traded off for a ego manifestation. You can buy 2 per character, and then also these will stay in the shop forever. With they'll mention this like a little bit here somewhere. Ego manifestations for pickup combatants. Okay, paused it. For pickup combatants will remain available even after the pickup period ends. Again, they don't specify whether this only applies to units that enter, or units that are like entering the permanent standard rotation, or if this also applies to collab and seasonal units. So we'll have to see on those. The 2 dupes viable from shop was a system that Wuthering Waves had, though they didn't have it. Because every character is limited there, they didn't have it be like permanent. So that's something nice to do. With it being permanent, there's no rush to get their ego dupes. You can just get it whenever you want. And as for how strong the actual like ego manifestations are, we'll see. Like, I think that stuff is nice because typically the way I like to play games is I like to focus on specific characters. So buying those manifestations was always worth it for me. But if you're somebody who's looking more to just get every character, then you just keep on buying the rules pretty much. One more thing is that I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the Galactic Calamity will have the ability to get ego manifestation materials here too. So that is really, really nice. There's free-to-play ways, or that shop is free-to-play too, but like non-summoning related ways to get more currency to unlock ego manifestations on your favorite units, which is really, really nice. And then lastly, they talk about having about enough gacha currency for 200 rolls from the start of the game. Now, this is likely including all of the one-off content. So, like, when you're clearing through the main story and you get a bunch of stars for doing, like, the main story completion and some other various, like, one-off star givings. I don't know if this covers stuff because there's a lot of random star sources, achievements, that's going to take forever. I mentioned how you have to farm breakdowns on your characters to get stars. That is also going to take a while. Trauma codes also give stars. That's going to take a while. I don't know if they're including all of that, but I would say a good portion of this 200 rolls is going to be the one-off stuff from just releasing the game that you always see in pretty much any game. But they do mention that they don't want it to just be like, they called it a mine in one of the interviews that I translated. Every time we get a new Galactic Calamity, we're going to be getting more events and rewards. So pretty much every 9 months, or not every 9 months, every 3 months, we should be seeing a spike in rewards given. And the first season I mentioned will start 3 weeks after the game launches, so we should have launch, a bunch of stuff there. You clear out a lot of your one-time stuff, then 3 weeks later we get a new season and we get a bunch more stuff. They did not specify whether these 200 rolls are standard banner rolls or rate-up banner rolls. We'll have to see about that. But that is it for this whole DEVTALK. This was really long, a lot of things to go through, but also a lot of good stuff. I think there are a lot of good things they talked about here. This gacha thing is probably the most important one. There's so much nice QOL to remove a lot of the FOMO that happens with gacha games. They mentioned that they want to focus a lot more on the gameplay of this game, which definitely feels like is a thing. Like, you do still have to save your rolls because they mentioned there will exist seasonal and potentially collab units. And for those, because they're not going to be around forever, you do want to make sure you can pick those up. But with how easy it should be to get pretty much any partner in the game and also be able to pick up some of the gacha characters randomly through the standard banner is going to be really, really nice. And that's it for this video. Game releases in like 2 weeks, and I'll see you guys then.